In 1913, a young man boarded a ship in India and set sail for England. He hoped to study at Cambridge University, one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. But when he arrived, he would have a hard time getting anyone to take him seriously. Why is that? Well, that's because this young man looked like a tramp. His clothes were dirty, and his hair and beard were unkempt. No one would have guessed that this scruffy-looking guy was actually a genius mathematician whose discoveries would influence some of the most important research in the world. And his story shows us that sometimes the greatest minds are those we overlook. Welcome back to my channel, Lazy Smart. This is the story of the lazy genius. Back in India, Ramanujan had been considered a genius since childhood. When he was just 16 years old, he published a paper in a mathematics journal in England. The paper contained 4 propositions about highly composite numbers, an area of mathematics dealing with numbers and their factors. 3 of the 4 propositions were entirely correct, but the 4th was wrong. Nonetheless, Professor G.H. Hardy from Cambridge University wrote to Ramanujan after reading his paper. He offered the young man a position at his university, and so Ramanujan sold some of his possessions to pay for a ticket to England. Upon arriving, however, Hardy was shocked by his new colleague's appearance. This wasn't what a Cambridge mathematician was supposed to look like. Moreover, Ramanujan didn't even have a bachelor's degree. He hadn't attended high school after he turned 14 and had only taken a few college courses. So while he did have a paper published in a math journal, he also had no grades or test scores to speak of. Clearly, Ramanujan didn't fit the mold. He was poor and unschooled and couldn't even explain basic mathematical concepts to save his life. In fact, he was so bad at explaining things that he could never get a full-time teaching position. Instead, he spent most of his career as a government clerk working part-time as a mathematician. And if this wasn't enough to make people underestimate him, Ramanujan was also extremely lazy. He would often spend days in bed doing nothing, and when he did work, he claimed that he got his results not through any kind of structured learning or hard work, but simply by thinking about the problems while walking or eating. He said that his insights came to him almost fully formed, and all he had to do was write them down. Of course, this doesn't mean that Ramanujan was actually lazy. It's possible that he was simply recalling the way his mind works, which is notoriously difficult to explain. Modern psychologists believe that many geniuses think in a non-linear fashion and have little use for rules or systems. But this was not an excuse to be unproductive. And regardless of the reason, other mathematicians thought Ramanujan was lazy, and that's why he struggled to find collaborators. They saw a sloppy thinker who couldn't explain his logic and question how anyone could work without structure or order. But Ramanujan's colleagues didn't know what they were missing out on. Although Ramanujan was bad at expressing his ideas, those ideas were quite extraordinary. In fact, Ramanujan was considered one of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th century. He made major contributions to the fields of number theory and infinite series, and he developed new methods for handling complex numbers. His theories are used today in fields ranging from physics to computer science. One example is the Riemann zeta function, which is a way of organizing complex numbers. It helps mathematicians understand how to distribute prime numbers across infinity. And it turns out that this distribution is related to the behavior of electrons. That's why the zeta function is used today in quantum chromodynamics, the theory that describes the behavior of particles called quarks. Quarks are thought to be the building blocks of matter, and understanding their behavior is essential to understanding how the universe works. So thanks to Ramanujan, particle physicists can understand the subatomic realm. He also helped to develop the theory of partitions. which has applications in fields as diverse as probability theory and the analysis of DNA sequences. He even influenced the development of the computer, which might seem surprising given that he died in 1920, 8 years before the first general-purpose computer was built. But Ramanujan was thinking about algorithms long before the word computer was even invented. He discovered ways to calculate the Bernoulli numbers, which are used to approximate functions like sin x over x. This turns out to be useful for modern computer scientists because computers store numbers in binary, and in order to perform certain calculations, they must convert these numbers into trigonometric functions. So thanks to Ramanujan, computers can approximate these functions quickly and accurately. In short, Ramanujan made significant contributions to mathematics and several other fields, all despite being a so-called lazy genius who seemed unproductive and disorganized. What's more, he did all this with very little formal training and in spite of facing constant discrimination. He was passed over for prestigious awards because of his poor appearance and lack of a degree. And although he did eventually become a Fellow of the Royal Society, he died without ever becoming a full member of Cambridge. In fact, he died believing that he was a failure. So how did such a brilliant man fall so far short of his potential? Well, there's evidence that Ramanujan suffered from mental illness. He experienced psychotic episodes in which he believed that his mother was trying to kill him, and he spent time in a mental hospital where he claimed that the food was trying to poison him. Some experts also think that Ramanujan may have had autism. They point out that he displayed symptoms such as an inability to read social cues, an insistence on routine, and an overwhelming need to work on his own. Whatever the cause, Ramanujan clearly struggled to succeed in a world that demanded certain standards of behavior and appearance. But it's not just a product of his time that led to his downfall. Even today, we tend to judge people based on superficial qualities like their looks. And the problem is that this can prevent us from recognizing true talent. We might dismiss someone as lazy or unmotivated when they actually have a different way of thinking. Or we might underestimate someone's intelligence because they don't look the part. As a result, we could end up missing out on the next great scientific breakthrough. So let Ramanujan's story serve as a warning. Don't judge a book by its cover. You never know when you might be missing out on something great. We all know that Albert Einstein was a genius. But did you know that his parents didn't think so at first? You see, he was actually pretty lazy and unmotivated as a student. He didn't finish his homework and often failed to turn in his assignments. But despite this, he would go on to change the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe for more historical stories. Thanks for watching. See you next time.